Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. For those who are just joining us for the first time this month, we are celebrating conservation. So we're talking to scientists, explorers, organizations all over the world that are protecting our habitats and protecting the species that live within them. So there's no better place for us to take a virtual field trip to today than the Turtle Hospital in the Florida Keys. Not only because many of us in the US and Canada are experiencing some pretty cold weather and we get to kind of warm up virtually, but because they do incredible work at the Turtle Hospital. So some of you may know there's 7 species of sea turtles, and all of them are threatened in one way or another by human activities and what we're doing to our oceans, especially things like bycatch. And the Turtle Hospital in the Florida Keys has been rehabilitating sea turtles, releasing them when possible, but also giving a home to sea turtles that can't be released back into the wild. So we're really excited today for our virtual field trip. Tammy is joining us today. Tammy's going to introduce us to some of the sea turtles and tell us a little bit about them. So Tammy, it's so great to have you joining us from sunny and warm Florida today.
Thank you, Joe. All right, guys. So what you're looking at now is our backyard. This is the Gulf of Mexico here in Marathon, Florida. We're located right in the middle of the Florida Keys, halfway between Miami and Key West. And I know you guys are all experiencing a little chilly weather and maybe a little bit of snow where you are. We actually had a cold front come through the Florida Keys this weekend as well. It dropped our temperatures to the lower 80s. So don't feel too sorry for us, though. We're still enjoying this lovely weather in the warm water. This is finally the time of the year when we can sleep with our windows open and turn the air conditioners off for a few months. So we really look forward to this time of year. All right, so I'm going to start you guys off in our big saltwater pool. This property was originally built as a motel in the 1950s. And when it was purchased by our founder in 1980, it actually came with this 160,000 gallon natural saltwater pool. This pool is fed from the Gulf of Mexico, and this is where most of our permanent residents and our non-releasable residents stay. I'm going to show you this little guy right now. This is Pink, and she is actually a green sea turtle who is eligible for release. So we keep the turtles in this particular quadrant on a slightly more natural diet. We don't feed them the commercial turtle chow that we give our other turtles here at the hospital. The water is very clear today, so hopefully you guys will get a nice, good view of these turtles here at the hospital. Now we end up with turtles here for a number of different reasons. Most of them, unfortunately, are due to human impact. A lot of the turtles that are here in our back saltwater pool actually have a unique condition. It's called bubble butt syndrome. It's officially called positive buoyancy disorder. And basically what happens is these turtles get hit by boats out in the wild, their internal organs malfunction, and they begin to release microbubbles of air and gas. They get trapped in the turtle's shell. And as you can imagine, a turtle with an air bubble in its shell becomes a floating turtle. And that is very problematic for turtles who are out in the wild. Turtles need to get down to the bottom of their habitats to feed on their seagrass beds. That's also where they sleep and rest. And a floating turtle is much more susceptible to both predator attacks and boat strikes hanging out on the surface of the water. Unfortunately, once we find these bubble butt patients, we know that they are non-releasable, but we do provide them a forever home here at the hospital, and we know how to make them more comfortable and improve their quality of life once they arrive. And we do that by adding weights to the back of their shells. So right now you are looking at Hanson Bowie. She's our largest green sea turtle here at the hospital. She weighs in at a little over 300 pounds. And on the back of her shell, both on the right and the left side, you can see a small little gray circle. And those are the weights that she is wearing. Now, the point of the weights is to return the turtles to their neutral buoyancy states. So they now get a choice as to whether they dive down to the bottom of their habitat for a nice nap or come up to the surface for a big breath of air. I do want to point out some of our permanent residents here at the hospital. That big guy right there in the middle now, that is Montel. Now, Montel was actually named for the talk show host Montel Williams. I don't know if you guys remember him or not, might be a little before your time, but he was the original Jerry Springer. And Montel got that name because he came to us with kind of a lot of drama in his life. He is missing his left front flipper entirely, half of his front right flipper. He's missing one of his eyes. He came to us with fibropapillomavirus. He was once attacked by a shark and once hit by a boat. I think his name should be Lucky, but it is Montel, and he is one of our adoptable permanent residents here at the hospital. April is another one of our residents. I believe he's down. And show you what April looks like. April's actually a boy, but it's very difficult to tell the gender of a sea turtle when they are juvenile. So we named April before we knew he was a boy, and he is actually a blind turtle. He is missing his right eye completely. He has only shadow vision left in his left eye. So he relies on his sense of smell and the feeling of vibrations in the water from food to know exactly where to find the food that he eats. Now, the rehabbers do feed him with a set of tongs twice a day, every day, to make sure that he gets all of the appropriate nourishment. He is a pretty big turtle. He needs a lot of fish and squid. All right, it looks like my guided tour group is on their way into this pool, so I'm going to hurry around and very quickly show you some of our cutest patients here at the hospital. We do have a couple of sea turtle hatchlings right now. Sorry, it's a little windy out here by the water. Now, sea turtle hatchlings have an incredibly low rate of survival. Believe it or not, only 1 out of every 1,000 turtle hatchlings will make it to turtle adulthood. Only 1 out of every 600 will make it past their first 2 years of life. So we are going to keep these sea turtle hatchlings here until they are about 2 years old, till they're nice and big and fat and strong. And then we will release them out into the wild and give them the very best chance of survival possible. I'm going to put my hand down next to this guy so you can see exactly how small he is. Just that small. Just a little nugget. Now he's about 4 weeks old. That's a loggerhead sea turtle. And loggerhead sea turtles are one of the 2 turtles that we have in abundance here in the Florida Keys. We have mostly loggerheads here and green sea turtles. There are actually 5 species of sea turtles that live here in Florida. Unfortunately, I do not have any leatherbacks, hawksbills, or a Kemp's Ridley to show you today, but those are the other 3 species. Now, these little loggerheads eat primarily hard-shelled invertebrates, things like crab and lobster. Here in the Florida Keys, they are especially fond of our Florida Keys conch. And these turtles have incredibly powerful jaws. They can actually bite entirely through a conch shell in one big bite. Green sea turtles, however, eat mostly seagrass and algae. They are primarily herbivores, and it's actually that green diet that turns the inside of their bodies a very bright and vibrant shade of green. Green sea turtles are, in fact, not green on the outside. They're brown on the outside, but they are green on the inside. Now, some of the other reasons that we might end up with turtles here at the hospital include trash and litter. All sea turtles love jellyfish. So when they see things like balloons that have been released into the air and plastic grocery bags floating around in the ocean, you can see how they would easily confuse that for their favorite food and gobble it right up. Now, unfortunately, what this leads to are intestinal impactions, trash stuck inside of the stomach and intestines of sea turtles that they cannot pass through. This is Marika. She is one of our rehabbers. She's doing a little bit of wound care on one of our turtles that had surgery yesterday. Settle down, buddy.
use it from the hotel to go to the stay here. So we have to build the other pool.
All right. And I'm going to take you around now to our intensive care unit, to our ICU, and show you a few more of our turtle patients over there.
No anymore. Now it's for the hospital and the educational program. And what happened
All right. This beautiful turtle was actually rescued and brought into the hospital on October 31st on Halloween. So she was named Jack-o'-lantern in honor of that date. Now we, the staff here at the Turtle Hospital, typically don't get to name the turtles that come here. We reserve that honor for the person who actually rescued the turtle. And this turtle came in with an entanglement around her left front flipper. Now, sea turtles do need to breathe air to survive. So if they become entangled in a crab trap rope or a buoy line and that holds them underwater, they can in fact drown underwater. Monofilament fishing line, it's also a pretty big problem for us here in Florida. When that finds our turtles in the water, it wraps around their flippers, their necks, and their throats. As the line gets tighter, it begins to cut into their skin. And if it's not removed in time, it can actually amputate an entire limb. Now this next turtle is another loggerhead turtle. Hi, sweetie. Her name is Starfish. Starfish, unfortunately, was the victim of a predator attack. So she is missing half of her front left flipper, most of her back right flipper. She does have some pretty serious lacerations and puncture wounds on her remaining flippers and her head. But this turtle is still incredibly feisty. She is incredibly active. She's still been eating on her own since the day that she arrived. And when her rehabbers pull her out of the water to do wound care, she is still trying to bite them. That sounds like a bad thing, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. This turtle is going to need to have a lot of fight in her in order to get better and go home. All right. This little guy is Koa. Koa is a very cute turtle. He's very young, about a year, maybe a little bit less than a year old. And Koa is missing the majority of his front left flipper. Now, Koa was also the victim of a predator attack, but it was probably not due to a shark. This turtle was more likely attacked by a predatory fish. We do have fish here in the Florida Keys that eat turtles, things like mahi-mahi and tuna. And we think that that is probably what happened to this little guy. This turtle just came in this past weekend. His name is Drifter. He was found floating off of Bahia Honda State Park, just on the other side of the 7 Mile Bridge here in the Florida Keys. Now, Drifter, as you can see, is now resting very comfortably at the bottom of his tank, and that is what turtles should be able to do. A floating turtle is very problematic, but a turtle should absolutely be able to dive and sit at the bottom of their tank. They can actually hold their breath for 4 to 5 hours at a time when they are out of state of rest. All right. This next turtle is pretty interesting. Her name is Maisie. Now she looks a lot like a green sea turtle. She has a small head and the starburst or sunburst pattern rather on the back of her scales of her shell looks a lot like a green sea turtle shell. But in fact, this turtle is a hybrid turtle. She's actually a cross between a green sea turtle and a hawksbill sea turtle. And we can tell that because she has overlapping scutes on the back of her shell. Scutes are those individual scales of the shell. The scutes are what will flake away and molt off as the turtles grow and their shells continue to grow and molt with them. But hawksbill sea turtles are the only species of sea turtles that have overlapping scutes. So the bottom of those scales overlap the one below them, kind of like shingles on a roof. And that is a characteristic that is exclusive to hawksbill sea turtles. So we know with certainty that Maisie here is a mix between a green and a hawksbill. Now, something that's a little unusual about turtles and hybrid turtle species is that they can actually reproduce. That's typically not true with other hybrids, but sea turtle species are so closely related that even this hybrid species can potentially still reproduce.
These guys are eating all day long. You guys have to taste a lot. And, so we give it the sequence the color reef. So
I've got one more turtle that I want to show you today, and she is kind of hard to see at the bottom of her tank there, but her name is Heather, and she is the very first patient that we're seeing today with fibropapillomavirus. Now that's a pretty serious virus. It's a naturally occurring virus here in the Florida Keys, but unfortunately we are seeing the rate of occurrence in our green sea turtles at a much higher rate than we should be. So right now, Heather has got some tumors underneath her chin. Let's see if I can get a different angle and catch those for you. Little white tumors right underneath her chin there and on the side of her neck and around her flippers. Now her condition hasn't quite stabilized well enough yet for us to be able to do surgery on her. We're waiting for her blood work to come back as normal. We do have a couple of veterinarians that we keep on retainer here at the Turtle Hospital. They live in other parts of Florida, but they consult with our rehab staff via phone and text every single day. And they're here on site at least once a week to conduct surgeries.
for example, red bill.
All right, Joe, I think we've covered most of the major causes of why turtles end up here at the hospital. You want to open up the session to questions?
All right, Tammy, that sounds good. Thank you so much for that awesome tour, introducing us to some of the patients, both big and small. That was great. All right. Well, I want to give a shout out to our classrooms on YouTube. We have a lot of classrooms tuning in live via YouTube today. I'm going to give a shout outs right now before we go to questions. So Ms. Wafer's group from Laurel Spring, they're joining us today. So hey to everybody there. Also want to say hey to Miss Hooker's class in Virginia. We've got some grade ones with Miss Nixon in Virginia Beach. Mrs. Holloway has some students at Middle School. Where else? Ms. Bergeron's class from Stafford Springs, so some grade 2s hanging out with us. Mrs. Gary's grade 2s in Woodbury, Minnesota. 4th graders in York, Pennsylvania. Big shout out to some students hanging out at North Dover Elementary in New Jersey. Another class in Virginia Beach, Mrs. Curley's class, 1st graders. Looks like we're popular in Virginia today. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody. Awesome. So keep sending in those questions, but let's meet one of our live classrooms now. We'll start off by visiting Mrs. Morno's group. They're 3rd graders in San Antonio, Texas. Let's get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, Texas? All right, looking good. Who's got a question?
What happens when the turtle shell comes off? Are they still alive?
The turtle shell doesn't come off. The turtles live inside of their shells for their entire lives. Land turtles can actually pull their heads and their flippers inside of their shells to protect themselves. Unfortunately, sea turtles cannot do that. And actually their spines and their ribs, the actual vertebrae and their bones are fused directly to the back of their shells, which are also made out of bone. So the shell of the turtle is part of the skeletal structure of the turtle. They never come out of their shell. It does not come off.
All right, good question to get us started, and a very good difference between our freshwater turtles and our sea turtles. Mr. Allen's group, grade 6s, hanging out in Brampton, Ontario. Get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, grade 6s? All right, who's up?
What's the most likely disease or condition that a turtle would get?
Yeah, so the majority of our patients that come into the hospital here in the Florida Keys come in because of the fibropapillomavirus. We actually have a human papillomavirus as well, but this one is just for turtles. And these cysts and tumors grow on and around their mouths, making it impossible for them to eat, on and over their eyes, making them go blind, and on their flippers, which seriously limits their mobility.
All right, let's take our first question from online. We have someone who's wondering, while the turtles are recovering, do you do any research on the turtles?
On occasion, we do research on the turtles. We certainly take a look at their medical conditions and share that information with other turtle hospitals around the world. We do often collaborate with other hospitals to share information. Just last year, we actually did a pharmaceutical study with some of our turtles here. We participated in trying to determine exactly the right load of medicine to combat a specific intestinal parasite that's going around for turtles. So yes, we do that on occasion.
All right, let's jump back to a live classroom this time. We've got some grade 6-7s joining us from Frederick with Mrs. Brown. Get that microphone turned on. There it is. How are we doing, 6-7s?
Good.
All right, go for it.
Is there a reason that only 1 in 1,000 turtle babies survive?
They have incredibly difficult odds to face out in the wild. So baby sea turtles have to face obstacles like shorebirds and ghost crabs and raccoons when they are making it from their nest in the sand out into the water. And then once they hit the water, these little guys are about the size of chicken nuggets, only about 1.5 inches long, and they have 7 to 15 miles to swim offshore to get to their sargassum seagrass beds, which is where they will grow up. Now, a pretty high percentage will make it to those seagrass beds, but over the next course of 2 years or so of their life, they also have those shorebirds to face, and they are growing up basically out in the middle of the ocean all by themselves. They just have a lot of dangerous things to face.
Absolutely. And Tammy, I just want to add an experience I had. I was in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, and there's a lot of condos on the shore. So the sea turtles get confused. They see the bright lights of the condos and they go in that direction instead of towards the ocean. So when we were on a walk, I found a whole bunch of Olive Ridley baby turtles that had gone the wrong way and were up on the deck of the condo I was staying on. So we had to turn them around and send them back to the ocean. So lots of different hardships that they face when they...
Yeah, definitely. Here in the Florida Keys, we have known turtle nesting beaches, and we will either change the street light bulbs to red lights or completely turn them off at night.
Perfect.
On the ocean to know exactly which direction the water is. So sometimes when they see those street lights or even porch or house lights from housing right on their nesting beaches, they can get confused and go the wrong way. We definitely don't want turtles to end up in the road instead of in the water.
All right. Mrs. Starr's class, they are hanging out, some first and second graders in Illinois. Let me see if I can get that microphone turned on. There it is. How are we doing, boys and girls?
Hello. All right, what's your question?
How many sea turtles are left in the wild?
I don't have an accurate number of a total population of sea turtles. I can tell you that we currently have 44 patients here at the hospital. We rescue an average of 100 turtles per year. And in our 33 years in operation as the Turtle Hospital, we estimate that we've released over 3,000 turtles.
All right. Well, Tammy, my favorite are the leatherbacks. I think they're such cool turtles. Do you often have any of those, or is that pretty rare when
it's pretty rare? Yeah, the leatherback turtles are, first of all, incredibly big. They get all the way up to 2,000 pounds. That is a full ton of sea turtle. They also typically prefer to live in deep ocean water. We don't see them terribly often here in the Keys because we have mostly shallow water here. Our coral reefs are about 5 miles offshore, and everything from our shoreline to the reef is very shallow. It's also why we don't have a lot of crashing waves in our ocean down here. But those leatherback sea turtles typically stay in deep ocean water. They also have a really unique deep diving capability that can allow them to dive down, believe it or not, 4,000 feet underneath the surface of the water looking for their favorite food. And that's actually the reason that the leatherback sea turtle does not have a hard shell. It actually has a thick leathery shell because the weight of the water and the pressure at that deep depth would crack a hard shell. So these guys have a flexible shell that can expand and contract with them to keep them safe on those super deep dives.
All right, 2,000 pounds of turtle. That's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give a shout out to a couple more classrooms I can see that are joining us. We have Mrs. Langer's group in Coburg, Ontario. So third and fourth graders are hanging out with us. Miss Martin's third graders in Newcastle, Ontario. So a few classrooms hanging out with us. Let's take a question here. Okay. Mrs. Langer's class is wondering, when you're trying to rehabilitate a turtle to go into the wild, but how long do they stay with you, and what's it like when they're released?
Yeah, it really depends entirely on how severe the injury is for the turtle. So some of our turtles stay here for a couple of weeks and are able to get better and go home. And some of them stay here for a year or more. As you can imagine, the minute the turtle is ready to go home, they want to go right back into the water, just like when you're at the hospital. You don't want to stay there any longer than you have to. So we want to put them back out in the wild just as quickly as we can, as soon as they're better. That can range again from just a few weeks to even a couple of years. It really depends on the patient.
And then do you release them from shore, or do you take them out in a boat?
And we do both, to be honest with you. We try to put the turtles back into the water as close to where they were rescued as possible, get them as close to home as we can. So if they were found on a private residential beach, we'll return them from that same beach. Sometimes we put them back in the middle of the ocean. And then occasionally we will have a public sea turtle release, and we will invite the general public to come and watch that turtle as it crawls back into the ocean and into the water and swims away.
All right, very cool. Let's see, Mr. Elsa's class, first and second from Burlington, Ontario. Let's get the mic on. How are we doing, Burlington? All right, we're ready for you.
What do turtles eat?
Well, green sea turtles eat primarily green things. They eat seagrass and algae. Loggerhead turtles eat hard-shelled invertebrates. They like things like crab and lobster and conch. And leatherback sea turtles eat jellyfish almost exclusively, but all sea turtles love jellyfish. That's probably their favorite.
All right, great question. Mrs. Ellis's group is in Petrolia, Ontario, some grade 5-6s. Let's get that mic on. How are we doing, grade 5-6?
Good. What is the most serious injury in a turtle that could have been rehabilitated?
I'm sorry, that broke up on me just a little bit. Can you repeat that for me, please?
What is the most serious injury in a turtle that you have rehabilitated?
The most serious injury, that's a tough one. But a few months ago, we actually had a turtle that came in with a spear from a spear gun that had been shot through her neck and made it about 2 feet down into her body cavity. That turtle's name was Splinter. We were able to successfully remove that spear, and it only took her about 8 weeks to rehabilitate until she was ready to go home. She actually went home just about a week and a half ago on November 1st.
All right. So Tammy, I'm going to hit you with a couple questions from online.
Okay.
We have Curtis class is wondering about the oldest turtle that you have right now.
Okay.
And another class is wondering about if they come across turtles that are stuck, maybe gone the wrong direction. Is it okay to handle them to make sure they can get back to the ocean?
Okay, so I assume we're talking about baby sea turtle hatchlings if you come across them. Typically, once sea turtles go from their nest into the ocean, they don't come back on land. Male turtles will never come back onto the beach again after they make it into the water, and female turtles will only come up out of the water to lay their nest of eggs every few years. So if you see sea turtle hatchlings, the very best thing to do is to handle them with gloves if at all possible. That's going to protect them from bacteria. Want to make sure they stay healthy as they go out into the water. They're still very, very young turtles, and they are susceptible to bacteria. It is okay for you to try to get those turtles to go back into the water. We prefer that you try to do that at night, however, or right at dusk. So if you find baby sea turtle hatchlings in the morning, we would ask that you keep them not in water, but in a bucket of sand in the shade somewhere, not indoors, outdoors somewhere, which is closer to their natural temperature, but keep them in the shade. And then when dusk comes around, Right at sunset, you can give them another opportunity to go back into the water, but certainly don't force them. We want to make sure that they can swim on their own and they know how to breathe well as they head out for their big journey to their sargassum seagrass beds. Now it looks like our guided tour next door is getting ready to wrap up. So as soon as she's finished, I will walk you over there and introduce you, hopefully, to our oldest turtle. I didn't see him the first time we went through, but we'll take a second attempt. Now turtles, it's actually pretty difficult to age or determine just how old a turtle is. They don't have teeth that we can examine like other species of animals. They don't have rings that we can count on their shell. But we do know that they are indeterminate growers. Now that means they continue growing all the way up until the day they die. So we can make some pretty good estimations about the age of a turtle based on what we know about the size of the turtle. All right, so that right there is our oldest turtle here at the hospital. That is actually the most famous turtle in the entire world. You could probably call him a bit of a celebrity. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the OG Bubble Butt, the notorious BB. He came to us in 1989. He's been with us here for 30 years, and he is the very first patient who was ever diagnosed with that bubble butt syndrome. So he is officially the oldest turtle here at the hospital. We believe that he is probably somewhere between 50 and 60 years old.
All right, very cool. Well, Tammy, I love this question. I think this is a really important one from this Holloway's group. They're wondering, they'd like to adopt a sea turtle. How can they go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can send us an email or you can call our gift shop and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. You can actually do it online on our website as well. Adopting a sea turtle costs $35 a year. Now that is a symbolic adoption. The turtle stays here at the hospital. We give your turtle all of the appropriate medicine and healthcare that it needs. Make sure that their tanks are clean. They get 2 full meals twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. And then every hour on the hour, as we bring a tour group through, all of our turtles also get some fun snacks and treats. And you will receive a color certificate and biography of your turtle, an official certificate of adoption, and then every few months, your individual turtle will write you a letter to tell you exactly what is going on with that turtle and all of their friends here at the Turtle Hospital.
All right, very cool. Well, if any of our classrooms who are joining us online today, whether on YouTube or on camera, you can send me an email or you can send something directly to the Turtle Hospital. We'll make sure that you get set up to the right spot so you can make that adoption, help support the awesome conservation work that's happening. So Tammy, I think we have a few more minutes, so I'm going to try and do a speed round and get a few more live questions to you.
Sounds great.
We'll start with Mrs. Ellis's group. Your microphone's on if you guys have another question.
Go ahead.
What can humans do to help protect the turtles?
That's a great question. So recycling and reusing is one of the biggest things that you can do. If you're using those reusable bags at the grocery store instead of plastic bags, that's a big help. There's also a campaign going around right now to stop using plastic straws. Plastic straws are actually too small to be recycled, and so they often slip through the cracks and end up in the ocean. All plastics break down in the ocean into microplastics, little tiny, tiny pieces of plastic. And not only are we finding those tiny pieces of plastic inside of baby sea turtle hatchlings that are just a few weeks old, but our coral reefs are actually ingesting those little tiny pieces of plastic as well, which does not leave them room to ingest the nutritious plankton that they should be eating instead. I would say recycling is probably the biggest thing that you can do to help sea turtles here in the ocean. You can also help support conservation efforts by donating. We here at the Turtle Hospital are completely and totally funded by your general admission and private donations. So we really appreciate any financial support that we can get here. We are a nonprofit organization. Is there another question from that classroom, perhaps?
Coming up. Hold on.
Take your time.
How many turtles do you have?
So currently we have 44 turtles here at the hospital. We have 5 permanent residents that are all available for adoption. Our permanent residents are Montel, who we met earlier, April, and Bubble Butts. We saw all 3 of those turtles. We also have Bender. She is our one and only Kemp's Ridley turtle here at the hospital, as well as Rebel. He's our adult male loggerhead turtle. So those 5 turtles are the permanent residents. They will live here for the rest of their lives, and they are the adoptable turtles. In addition to those turtles, we also have 44 patients that are being treated here at the hospital.
Would you like another question?
Sure, I think we might have lost Joe temporarily, so hopefully he'll pop back on.
Okay.
How do turtles digest food?
How do turtles digest food? Well, they eat foods with their mouths, just like you and I do, and they go through their stomach system and into their intestines. Now, unfortunately, that's one of the large problems when turtles eat plastic and trash and debris out in the wild. That trash actually gets stuck inside of their stomach and intestines, and they cannot pass it through. So we do a number of things to try to, this is going to sound a little funny, but we're going to try to encourage the turtles to poop, because we want them to poop that trash out of their bodies. So we will give them something called lactulose. It's kind of like a vegetable oil that lubes up the inside of their bodies and makes everything a little bit more slippery. We will also give the turtles some extra fiber in the form of Metamucil. You guys probably don't know what that is, but I'm sure your teachers and your chaperones and parents do. It's a fiber product that we can actually stuff inside of a squid, and then we can feed that squid to the turtle, and hopefully that will encourage the turtle to poop out the trash that they eat. Now, turtles don't just eat plastic trash like plastic bags and straws that are out in the ocean. They also eat things like cigarette butts. Now, cigarette butts, unfortunately, is something that we find inside of a lot of turtles. People throw their cigarette butts out of the car window or stomp them out on the ground and leave them there. Those cigarette butts then wash into the sewers and waterways. Eventually, everything makes it here to the ocean, and floating on the surface of the ocean, those cigarette butts look like delicious shrimp to our turtles.
All right. Well, Tammy, I had a little internet blink, but I'm back. Have we visited any classrooms? Allison?
We got 3 questions from the last classroom, so we should probably move on to the next.
All right, excellent. Let's see. Let's go to Mrs. Brown's class. Your microphone's on.
Hi. So how do you think climate change has affected the different diseases you see in the turtles?
Climate change, let's see. The different diseases that we see in the turtles, primarily the fibropapillomavirus, we think is influenced by water pollution more than anything else. And this is going to sound sort of weird, but green sea turtles eat green things, right? Seagrass and algae. And those aquatic plants are actually the plants that filter out and absorb toxic chemicals once they get into our water. So even though we have a larger population of loggerhead turtles here in the Florida Keys, we are only seeing that fibropapillomavirus in our green sea turtles, and that's largely because they are the turtles that are eating the green stuff. So the seagrass and the algae remove and absorb the toxic chemicals once they end up in our water, but that's also the primary food source for these green turtles. So the greens come along and eat that seagrass and algae. They're now ingesting these chemicals at a much higher concentration than they should be, and it is affecting their immune systems.
All right, great question. Let's go to Mrs. Moran's class. Your microphone's on again.
So I wanted to ask, how much turtles do y'all get per month?
That's a hard one. We don't necessarily have a statistic per month. We average about 100 turtles a year that we take in. We rely on the general public to bring the turtles to us. We're not out on the water looking for injured turtles. We're here at the hospital helping the turtle patients. So we rely on recreational boaters and fishing and snorkeling charter captains and even the Coast Guard to bring us turtles. So the more people that we have visiting here in the Florida Keys and the more boats are on the water, that typically seems to be when we get the most turtle patients.
All right, Mrs. Starr's class, your mic's on again.
What type of sea turtle is the most endangered?
That is the Kemp's Ridley. The Kemp's Ridley is the smallest species and the most critically endangered.
All right, Burlington, Ontario, Mr. Els's group, your microphone's on. Oh, I lied. It's not turning on for me. Mr. Else, if you're close by, can you try and turn it on?
How do turtles get attacked with their hard shell?
Yeah, so sharks can actually still try to attack turtles. Now, turtles will try to present their shell to the mouth of the shark. But as we saw with starfish, the turtle that was in our ICU earlier, the sharks can still get a pretty good bite out of their flippers. But their shells do tend to protect the inside of their bodies. That is why they have the hard shells.
All right, and we'll get final question in Mr. Allen's class. Your microphone is on.
What would happen if a turtle's shell is broken?
If the turtle shell is broken, their soft body cavity, their actual soft tissue will show through underneath the shell of that turtle. Turtles can survive without the hard shell, but it's pretty difficult for them to do that in the wild. Now, the shells are made out of bone, so they will eventually regenerate and fuse back together, but that's going to take a lot of time, many, many months, maybe even a year.
All right. Well, Tammy, thank you so much for taking us on our little tour today. The Turtle Hospital is absolutely beautiful. I think we could feel some of that warm weather radiating through the screen. So thank you very much for that. And
our
thank
pleasure.
You for all your knowledge and sharing with us. And I'm loving this shot here of all the sea turtles clamoring in to join our event today.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we hope that you all have a totally awesome day.
All right. Anybody want more adoption information? Don't hesitate to shoot myself an email or message the Turtle Hospital directly. And I'm going to turn all the microphones on, boys and girls, if you want to get nice and loud.
I am a turtle.
So good at that. Thank you for that awesome sign out. And we look forward to our next virtual field trip to the Florida Keys. Thanks, everyone.